In a high school science fair experiment in 1964, a 17-year-old stayed awake for 11 days. Since then, standards of science fair safety have changed. It's this way of thinking that you can power through, that sleep is the easiest corner to cut. That makes sleep distribution among most common sources of health problems in insufficient sleep causes many chronic and acute medical conditions that have an enormous impact on quality of life, not to mention the economy. While no one knows why we sleep, it is a universal biological imperative. No animal with a brain can survive without it. Dolphins are said to sleep only half their brain at a time, keeping partially alert for predators. Many of us spend much of our lives in a similar state. How much sleep do I actually need? One 2014 study of more than 3,000 people in Finland found that the amount of sleep that correlated with the fewest sick days was 7.63 hours a night for women and 7.76 hours for men. So either that is the common amount of sleep that keeps people well, or that's the amount that makes them least likely to lie about being sick when they want to skip work. Or maybe people who were already sick with some chronic condition were sleeping more than that, or less, as a result of their illness. Statistics are tough to interpret. Isolated studies are tougher. That's why the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and the Sleep Research Society convened a body of scientists from around the world to answer this question through a review of known research. They looked at the effects of sleep on cardiovascular disease, cancer, obesity, cognitive failure, and human performance, weighting each paper based on its scientific strength. The consensus: most adults function best after 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Going to sleep and waking up at consistent times each day is valuable too. When we get fewer than 7 hours, we are impaired to degrees that vary from person to person. When sleep persistently falls below 6 hours per 24, we are at an increased risk of health problems. Can I train myself to need less sleep? As an experiment for his high school science fair in 1964, 17-year-old San Diego boy named Randy Gradner stayed awake for 264 hours. That is 11 days. Since 1964, the standards of science fair safety have changed. The project attracted the attention of Stanford sleep researcher William Dement, among others. Dement and other researchers took turns watching and assessing the young man's consciousness. By all accounts, he took no stimulant medications, nor did he seem to suffer any permanent deficits. Dement said that on day 10, Gradner even beat him at pinball. The boy later said of his experiment that the key to staying awake was talking yourself into it. I asked David Dinges, the chief of the Division of Sleep and Chronobiology at the University of Pennsylvania, How many people could do anything close to that without dying? He replied that when animals are sleep deprived constantly, they will suffer serious biological consequences. Death is one of those consequences. That said, cases like Gardner's of people who suffered great sleep deprivation without major setbacks are well documented. A small number of people, sometimes called short sleepers, and common thought to make up perhaps 1% of the population, seem to thrive on only 4 or 5 hours a night. Dinges said that we probably do have people among us, and not necessarily 1%. There may be many more than that, who can actually tolerate sleep loss better than others. The proposition has been borne out in studies of participants in transoceanic sailing races, which did not afford them the luxury of long blocks of sleep. The winners tended to be the people who slept the least, often in multiple short bursts. The concept of sleeping in short bursts have spread since those races began in 1960s. Today, a small global community of people practices polyphasic sleeping, based on the idea that the partitioning your sleep into segments, you can get away with less of it. Thought it is possible to train yourself to sleep in spurts instead of a single nightly block. Dinges says it does not seem possible to train oneself to need less sleep per 24-hour cycle. And he notes that even for the 1% or so who can survive on less sleep and function well cognitively, we still don't know how the practice might be affecting metabolism, mood, and myriad other factors. You may be cheerful but not cognitively fit, or you may be cognitively fit but hard to be around because you're pushy or hyperactive. Around the time of Gardner's historic science project, the US military got interested in sleep deprivation research. Could soldiers be trained to function in sustained warfare or very little sleep? The original studies seem to say yes, but the military put soldiers in the lab to make certain they stayed awake. Performance suffered. Cumulative deficits occurred with each night of suboptimal sleep. The less sleep the soldiers got, the more deficits they suffered the next day. But as with my own residency experience, they couldn't tell that they had a deficit. They would insist that they were fine, said Dinges, but weren't performing well at all. And the discrepancy was extreme. These findings has been replicated many times over the intervening decades, even as many professions continue to encourage and applaud sleep deprivation. In one study published in journal, sleep researchers kept pupils just slightly sleep deprived, allowing them only 6 hours to sleep each night, and watched the subjects' performance on cognitive tests plummet. The crucial findings was that throughout their time in the study, the Sixers thought they were functioning perfectly well. Effective sleep habits, like many things, seem to come back to self-awareness.